Now, I just want to go to a bit of historical data. So, one of the road safety groups put out a press release recently saying that between 2007 and 2017 there were 14,525 road fatalities in Australia. Were you aware of that?
I wasn't, Senator, but I'm sure my colleagues were.
Sorry, so what was your title again?
Deputy Secretary.
And road safety is in your remit?
It is within my
And you're not aware of the last, like the decade stats?
I'm aware of the statistics. I wasn't aware of the report that you just mentioned, Senator.
Were you aware of the Bureau of Infrastructure, Transport and Regional Economics Report 140?
Yes, Senator.
You are aware of that one?
Yes, Senator.
Okay, so you'd be aware of the recommendation contained in that report, which says, BITR has modelled a hypothetical scenario to bring forward autonomous emergency braking to all new light vehicles from 2018. From 2018, an AEB system with vulnerable road user protection is made a requirement for all light vehicles, and from 2020, a high-speed system with vulnerable road user protection is a requirement for all new light vehicles. You'd be aware of that recommendation?
Yes, Senator.
And you're aware that the scenario results in an additional saving of 597 deaths and 24,100 hospitalised injuries by 33, sorry.
Yes, Senator.
So is there any reason why that great work that was done in 2014 wasn't acted upon?
Senator, I might ask my colleague, Mr Folds, to respond to your questions.
Alex Folds, Executive Director, Surface Transport Policy Division. Senator, the work that was done by BITRA in 2014 suggested that low-speed AEB could have the results that you just mentioned. We have, as a department, in the place where we develop Australian design rules, started work on AEB. I'd also like to point out that, as well, the Commonwealth funds ANCAP to the tune, most recently, of 6.64 million over the next 5 years. ANCAP is a non-regulatory influence in this space, and to date, 31% of all vehicles arriving new to the market in Australia have AEB fitted.
I understand all that.
There is no mandated standard worldwide for light vehicles on AEB, and there is work going on with the United Nations in harmonisation of road safety standards, and this department is actively part of that development.
Yeah. Well, we understand the argument, but there was a very good report in 2014. It put together a hypothetical scenario which resulted in the saving of nearly 600 Australian lives and 24,100 hospitalised injuries.
Yes.
You agree with that? And do you also agree that since 2014 to now, we didn't enact any of that?
But Senator, as Mr Folds has explained, there is no international standard. So
No, I'm not talking about international standards. I'm talking about your standard. You had a report, you had a scenario, you chose to go the least regulatory option. The result of that is 600 deaths and 24,100 injuries.
Well, Senator, to have an Australian standard would need to have an international standard to refer back to.
There are Australians
we
we're
dumb
talking
cars
about.
down to bring them into this nation.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do.
No,
Sorry, Senator Gallagher, we do. We dumb them down from the American standards and the European Union. I'm happy to have the argument with you on the front page of any paper.
In terms of design
that's the
standards.
truth.
Senator, if Ms Spence could just finish your answer on the
I'm sorry, I
relationship
cut in yet.
with international
Senator
standards.
Gallagher.
All I was going to say, Senator,
Okay,
is that...
so I suppose the point I'm making is there was extremely good work done by the Bureau of Infrastructure and Transport Regional Economics, which modelled approximately 600 saved lives and 24,100 hospitalised injuries. But we didn't take that up because there's no international standard.
Senator, I think we've explained in this committee previously that we are certainly working with ANCAP to make sure that there is funding available. ANCAP is making sure that to get the best ratings, cars have the AEBs installed. But in terms of an ADR, we do require a international standard which can be the basis on which we can base our own standards.
So just so we move on, I'll move on to some other stuff, but this international holy grail that you're seeking, what does it look like? I mean, AEB is AEB.
I think if there is, as I understand it, and Mr Folds can correct me if I'm wrong, we are working with the UN, so the UN body that is responsible for developing the standard, to make sure that there is actually a more technical definition of what an AEB actually constitutes, so that we'd include that with our ADR.
Well, I mean, I've said this before, but the market left to itself will advertise a car that parks itself in Australia.
Yes,
It's the same technology that stops you from running into the car in front of you, and you won't mandate it. That's basically where we're at. Anyway, clearly, you're not going to mandate it. When is it going to happen?
Senator, to let you know the status, under the current National Road Safety Action Plan, there were 3 things that needed to be mandated. One of them was in relation to ESC for motorcycles. That's now happened. One of them in relation to electronic stability control for heavy vehicles. That is imminent.
All heavy vehicles?
Yes. The
Light,
reason...
rigid?
Some rigid. There is, and so some of the rigid vehicles have come in. I can find the detail for you in a minute, but some rigid vehicles have come into that, which will, under the regulatory impact statement, save a number of lives over the period of the RIS. But the point I was going to make is that electronic stability control on heavy vehicles, it's important that that comes in first so that you have a stable vehicle that is being emergency braked. So we are now into the next step, which is putting out a regulatory impact statement for AEB for heavy vehicles, and we would expect that before the end of this year that would come out. That's the time frame, and then once that's complete, you'd expect mandation, if that is the outcome, sometime after that. But it does take a long time for a mandated standard to be rolled into the fleet. So by the time...
Why is that?
Well, because the fleet doesn't renew itself instantly every year.
No, I understand. But why does it take you a long time to mandate the standard? That's what I'm asking.
So there are a number of...
It take 10 years to renew the fleet, easy.
So one of the issues, Senator, and I'll just refer to some notes, the time you need to design and research and test these complex standards and get agreement by relevant countries under UN Working Party 29, that's one reason.
But let's be fair here. We only need to get agreement of Australians, don't we, to mandate in Australia?
Well, you can mandate in Australia...
Why do we need the agreement of other countries to what we mandate in Australia?
Well, one of the major reasons, Senator, is that you have to then apply all of the testing and all of the expense associated with doing that. The reason that you have international testing of vehicle standards is so that where you have under the agreement, particularly the 1958 UN Harmonisation Agreement, if country X has done the testing, then we don't need to do that testing. But when you have a standard that is accepted by all, then the testing that is accepted by all, it means that we don't have to duplicate the effort, which actually reduces costs in the heavy vehicle or light vehicle sector. I mean, that's one of the principal reasons why you go for a United Nations harmonised arrangement. It's a principles-based arrangement to try and get that technical understanding across more than one country.
I struggle to understand your logic, but put it this way. Your Bureau of Infrastructure and Transport Regional Economics did a study which pointed to saving of a lot of lives and hospitalised injuries. It was policy of the current government, and it's now 2018, and we are no closer to mandating AEB than we were in 2014.
I think, Senator, actually, we are closer because we are working...
Okay, so when is it going to happen?
I don't have a date for you, I'm sorry, Senator.
How long does it take you to mandate anything?
Well, as I said, we are working very hard with the relevant UN working group to get the international standard. In the interim, we're trying to using a non-regulatory tool through ANCAP, and we are seeing a significant take-up of AEB. Until we've actually got a technical standard that we can link it to internationally, that's when the process for setting an ADR will be in place.
So the 2018-19 budget portfolio statements show the department appropriation for road safety is expected to fall from an estimated actual amount of 19.797 million in 2017-18 to 17,547 in 18-19 and to 16,134 in 2021. What areas of the road safety program will be cut over the forward estimates?
Senator, I'd have to take that on notice in terms of
don't know?
specifics.
Someone must have constructed the budget.
Mr. Chair, we indicated we'll take something on notice. That's exactly what it means,
Okay.
Senator.
Well, maybe I'll
It's
ask.
just come out, surely, Minister, through you, surely.
I'm just
it's
saying,
just
look,
come out.
through the chair, look, if you give the officer an opportunity to actually answer that question before you fire another one, I think just the convention would be a lot easier to actually get information.
Okay, so I'll ask a separate question. Is anybody who constructed the forward estimated amounts in the room or available to give evidence about the construction of the, decline in spending on road safety?
I think, Senator, it'd be better if we took that question on notice, even if we can try and get back to you later this afternoon.
Sorry, what's happening this afternoon?
I said we'll try and come back to you later this afternoon with an explanation. Yeah. But if we can take it on notice.
On notice with the indication that it'll be this afternoon.
Okay. So we're not, are you aware of any areas of the road safety program that have finished, made redundant, completed, that would attribute to a decline in spend?
As I said, Senator, we'll take the question on notice and get back to you if we can this afternoon.
Can the department explain why, do you agree that road fatalities are currently 20% higher than the 2020 target of the National Road Safety Strategy? And that your own Bureau of Infrastructure, Transport and Regional Economics is now forecasting an increase in road deaths and hospitalisations?
Yes, Senator.
So you're aware of the Bureau forecasting an increase in road deaths and in hospitalisations, and we're also aware, because you've taken it on notice, that we're decreasing spending on road safety.
Well, as I said, Senator, we'll get back to you on the spending and why the reduction in the profile. Every effort is being made, but both at the Commonwealth and with the state and territory governments to improve road safety outcomes. As recently as on Friday when the Transport and Infrastructure Council signed off on the new Road Safety Action Plan. So everyone takes very seriously the commitment to reducing road fatalities and serious injuries.
Can the department please provide an estimate of the value of the Secretariat supporting the National Road Safety Strategy inquiry, i.e. the number of staff, and what levels are dedicated to the Secretariat over that period?
Senator, I'd have to take that on notice.
How is the inquiry progressing?
We're still expecting, we were expecting to get a report this month. We don't have a specific date from the panel yet as to when we'll receive it.
So when you say you need to take the number of staff on notice, is that because it's more than 10 or less than 1 or what?
Senator, I think it's because people do multiple things, and so trying to actually say how many staff are specifically supporting that would be quite difficult to actually come up with the number, but that's what I'll take on notice.
So the NRSS Action Plan 1517 had the following target to achieve by the end of 2017. Initial implementation of willing to pay values based on available estimates and possible commencement of comprehensive Australian study to introduce updated values. Can you explain why this target has not been met?
I don't know if one of my colleagues would, again, I'm sorry, Senator, I'll have to take that on notice.
Senator, could I ask you to repeat the question?
So the NRSS Action Plan 2015-17, initial implementation of willingness to pay values based on available estimates and possible commencement of a comprehensive Australian study to produce updated values. Can the department please explain why this target has not been met?
I think they're going to take that on notice.
No one knows. So the plan also had demonstrable improvements to enforcement operations and compliance outcomes. Can you explain if that target is measured and whether it's been met?
Well, the implementation plan, the action plan will be reported on at the end of the year. So
Sorry,
not
I
at this
can't hear.
stage. Stephanie Werner, General Manager, Land Transport Policy and Safety. There's an annual implementation report provided. It'll be provided at the end of this calendar year. So at this stage, Senator, no, I'm not able to provide that information to you.
Okay, so the action plan had the following target: examine and progress options to improve measurement and reporting of non-fatal and disabling injury crashes, particularly through the development of match crash and hospital data systems. Can we actually measure hospitalisation as a result of a road crash in Australia yet?
Senator, that work remains in progress.
So we can't measure nationally?
On a national basis today, no, we can't. We have concluded the pilot phase of a project designed to match data nationally, and the second phase of the project will be to match that data back over the past 10 years.
Okay. So we can't. Look, what is the main hold up there? We've been at this for quite a while. So what is the key problems that are not allowing us to measure hospitalisations as a result of road accidents?
So one of the major issues, Senator, has been to get ethics approvals for national matching and linking of hospital deaths and crash data for past and future years. As of 8th
What's
of May...
ethics approval mean?
Sorry?
What's
Well,
ethics?
ethics approval is in the research. When the research is done, you need certain approvals to be able to conduct research in a way that meets the ethics boards of hospitals, the research institutions, and that approval has taken a while. So I can tell you that all the permissions have been received in 6 jurisdictions, so New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, South Australia, ACT and the Northern Territory. But Tasmanian health approvals are still required because there's been some difficulty in getting hospital acceptance. Western Australia, the health process is still being clarified following a legislative change, but it should happen shortly. And the outstanding approvals will, as Ms Werner talked about stage 2, outstanding approvals for Tasmania and WA will be sought in stage 2. And so it has taken a long time, Senator, but it is actually moving forward. There are states that have this data themselves and have linked crash data, police data and hospital data, but the national overview is taking a little longer.
So just for the record, how long have we been attempting to get this national data together?
Senator, I'd have to take that on notice. I don't know when it began.
It's over 10 years?
I would have to take it on notice.
It's not a matter that comes before you on a regular basis?
Senator, there is a lot of work that's being done in this place. As Mr Foles has just read through, we have actually made significant progress. Yes, it is taking a long time to do it, but I think we are getting far closer than we ever have been at actually having what we think is a very important national data set.
Okay. So, Mr Foles, you mentioned electronic stability control. So, has that been rolled out to all heavy vehicles? So it's all rigid and articulated heavy vehicles?
Not all rigid. And it hasn't. It's imminent. It hasn't. It is yet to be decided. Like it hasn't actually.
So why did rigids get excluded?
Yeah. Look, the full detail. I'll see if I've got.
Well, I mean, they make up the greater proportion of the fleet.
Yeah. I just don't want to answer a question without looking at the detail, Senator. And if I can't find it quickly, I'll have to take it on notice and try and get it back later in the day.
So just in relation to your department, have you got more staff working in road safety since last estimate or less?
Be the same, Senator.
How many? How many
Full?
full-time employees? How many full-time equivalents?
It's 5.5 full-time employees.
5.5.
Although, Senator, as I think we've explained previously, there are other areas within the department whose work does contribute to road safety outcomes. For example, the work that the Bureau does the work that our Infrastructure Investment Division does in terms of funding decisions to support safer outcomes as well. So that's the full-time dedicated staff on road safety matters, but they're not the only staff in the department that deal.
So how many full-time equivalents do you have dedicated to road safety?
That's what I said. We've got the 5.5 full-time equivalents dedicated to road safety, but there are a number of other areas in the department whose work contributes to road safety outcomes.
Okay.
As part of their general
I thought that
work.
would be the question. If the full-time equivalent is a measure of hours, not people,
Yep.
why can't you say 10 or
So-
5 or 6?
We wouldn't want to. I think it's very difficult as it goes to the discussion around who's supporting the panel as well. People are doing multiple things. I don't have a breakdown, but I do know that there are a number of areas
Okay.
within the department
So-
that contribute to the road safety
So perhaps
outcomes.
on notice, could you give me a breakdown of the 5.5 and any ancillary work that's done so as that we can
Yeah.
have a chart which says road safety is 5.5 people in the Commonwealth.
Yes,
And
Senator.
this is what they're responsible for.
And Senator, we can do that because that includes the Vehicle Safety Standards Branch and the 57 FTEs that work there who deal in the working through design regulations that we were talking about earlier. If I could just talk to you about heavy vehicle, during consultation for ESC on trucks, the amount of regulation would cover more vehicle types, so rigid trucks as well as prime movers, but the RIS concluded that the net benefits would potentially fall under if every vehicle was involved. But so the proposal is that some rigid vehicles are included in the ESC, but as I say, it's still subject to government decision. So,
Okay. So
that's
can we
where we're
have
at.
on notice that answer?
Yes, Senator.
Yep.
So who in the department is accountable for guaranteeing outcomes are met in road safety?
Sorry, Senator, can you say that?
Who in the department is accountable for guaranteeing outcomes are met in road safety? Where does the buck stop in road safety in the department? Is there a title holder?
Well, Senator, I'm responsible for the Surface Transport Policy Division, so I'd be responsible for.
Okay.
their
So if
outcomes.
I was to say that we're 20% over our target in deaths and probably way out because we can't even measure it in injuries, do you think the department is on top of road safety? I mean, are you meeting the objectives that the government's laid down to 2020? Clearly, it's a lot of
Senator-
special interest groups are saying you're not.
Well, Senator, we obviously take it very seriously. We work very closely with the states and territories who have a shared responsibility for achieving these targets. We are looking for all opportunities to improve the outcome.
Does the department see any gaps that could be met by the federal government, for example, technology adaptation?
As we've already mentioned, we are working working internationally to try and speed up the timing for getting the AEB standards in place so that we can mandate that. We've also provided funding, as Mr Foles mentioned, to ANCAP, which we think does make a significant contribution to improving the nature of the fleet in Australia.
No
in
one
terms of-
questions ANCAP's ability to influence, high ends of the market. But they have to, come to you every year for funding. So you're using them as a means of answering my questions, but they tell us that they're subject to funding review on an annual basis. Is that
Sorry, Senator, that's actually not correct. The funding that was announced, I think about 2 weeks ago, was over the forward estimates.
It's 6.6 million and it's over 5 years.
right? So they're
And
now
that gives-
funded into the
That
future.
gives funding certainty to ANCAP to continue their work. And they don't just deal in high-end vehicles, Senator. They deal in a large number of vehicles of all types.
No, I actually said that I've no doubt about their ability to influence high end of the market. That's what I said. I didn't
Sorry,
say
I
they
misheard
just
you.
deal in high end vehicles. So, are we going to be able to? Are you aware of what's happening in the United States, where Toyota will no longer make any cars without AEB? Are you aware of that sort of information?
Yes, Senator, we do keep closely involved in what's happening internationally.
So in the United States, it's likely by 2020 there'll be no new vehicles on the market. They haven't got AEB.
But Senator, I'd also note that my understanding is that no country has actually mandated AEB for light vehicles.
That's correct.
So we're not.
How is that an excuse for us?
No, it's not an excuse, Senator. I'm simply saying that other countries are encouraging the rollout of AEB without mandating the inclusion of AEBs.
Including Australia through ANCAP.
Do you see any improvement in road safety through infrastructure? Is that part of your remit when billions are allocated to roads? Do you get a road safety view? Do you get in there and say, well, look, it's a good economic indicator. If we stop killing and injuring people on these roads, it'll be good for the economy?
Definitely, Senator. I think we've got a few examples. I think there are some examples. Ms Werner, do you want to run through some examples where funding has been provided? No, that's fine.
So, Senator, if you take, for example, some of the major infrastructure investments, and there are a couple. There's the first one on the Pacific Highway. In the last 10 years, fatalities have dropped by 50%, and that's a direct result of the investment into dual carriageway on the Pacific Highway.
It's not rocket science. Divide a road and people will stop running into each other.
That's correct. And it's, at the same time, you may also know that a number of, in the most recent budget, there have been programs to do the wire rope, wire barrier work in regional areas, because so many, it's a cost-effective way of achieving a very good road safety outcome with minimal investment. The Black Spots program is another program where, I just don't have the numbers at my fingertips, where safety is prioritised. The Heavy Vehicle Safety and Productivity program, which doesn't just do rest stops, but also does bridges, upgrading of bridges to make them better for heavy vehicles. All of those have a road safety component as well as a productivity component, and all of those go to improving road safety.
So what are the latest figures regarding serious accidents involving heavy vehicles which have involved death or serious injury? So official figures state that there's been an almost 10% increase in articulated truck crashes and deaths in 2017 compared to 2016.
The Bureau of Infrastructure, Transport and Regional Economics would be better placed to answer this question, Senator.
Well, I'm just asking of the Road Safety Division of the Federal Department whether they're aware of a 10% increase in
so the figures,
deaths in the trucking industry in 2017.
The figures that
if you want me to go to economics, I thought they would be a natural place to start.
The figures that I have, Senator, are that during the 12 months to December 2017, there were 168 fatal crashes involving heavy trucks. That represented an increase in the fatal heavy truck crashes compared to the corresponding period 1 year earlier. Articulated truck crashes increased, rigid truck crashes increased. However, fatal crashes involving heavy trucks have declined by a statistically significant average value of 2.3% per year over the past 10 years. Over the last 10 calendar years, fatal crashes involving articulated trucks have declined by a total of 34.9%. For heavy rigid truck involvement, the decline was 2.9%. Standardised by
vehicle kilometres over time.
Over the last 10 years, the rate of fatal crashes involving articulated trucks has declined by 47.1%. The rate of fatal crashes involving heavy rigid trucks has declined by 20.6%. The rate of fatal crashes for all vehicle traffic has declined by 32.6%. This data is preliminary and it's subject to revision by jurisdictions.
There's more vehicles on the road, we're doing more kilometres.
Yes.
And statistically, there's less people killed than if we were in the old days of bad road, bad trucks, more fatigue. So what does it really mean if we've got 10% more from 17, 18? Is that a good stat, you're saying?
Well, there are a number of reasons for the recent increase in heavy vehicle fatalities. There was a particularly bad period in New South Wales. Overall, the trend per 100,000 of population is downward, but there will sometimes be spikes, and they may relate to a particularly bad incident that occurs. There are a whole range of actions that we are taking to try and deal with this issue. They were considered most recently by the Transport and Infrastructure Council last Friday, where they agreed to a new heavy vehicle safety package of work that we will take forward over the next 6 months to a year.
Okay. Now, the government's own review conducted by PwC concluded that orders authorised by the Road Safety Remuneration Tribunal would have cut trucking crashes by fatalities by 28%. Do you reject that, Ms. Spencer? Is it?
Senator, the abolition of the Road Safety Remuneration Tribunal is a matter for the government.
So, what is the department's alternative measure then if there is a Pricewaterhouse report that says it would have their RSRT would have reduced truck crashes by 28%? It's a decision of government, I accept that. Do you have any alternative measures in place that would reduce what appears to be a spike in trucking fatalities?
Yes, Senator. We have a whole range of issues in place. So with regard to the Remuneration Tribunal specifically, that funding has been directed to the Heavy Vehicle Safety Initiative, which the Commonwealth Government funds. It's administered by the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator. That considers proposals from both industry and regulators that might improve safety for heavy vehicles, and then Transport and Infrastructure Council, the Ministerial Council, agrees on which proposals will go forward each year. The Safety Initiative's work plan includes implementing an expanded network of heavy vehicle compliance monitoring camera capability in Victoria, the ACT, Queensland and South Australia, the rollout of local safe freight networks in higher than average heavy vehicle crash zones, the development of a master industry code of practice to be led in partnership with the Australian Trucking Association and the Australian Logistics Council, bringing forward the implementation of a reporting service to allow individuals to anonymously report potential heavy vehicle national law infringements, allowing workers to report company behaviour that could negatively impact safety, awareness and education to help address issues associated with caravan owners and long-haul truck drivers, ensuring rest stops, and developing an evacuation advisory for bus operators and drivers that will act as a practical tool on what to do in the event of a bus fire. To date, 6 of the cameras have been rolled out. We expect a further 4 to be in place by the end of this financial year, and we expect a further 2 to be in place by the end of 2018, bringing the camera sites funded through the first 2 rounds up to 12 in total. There is a work plan going forward for 2018 to 2019. However, that is subject to approval by the Ministerial Council.
So, drilling down into that, what concrete steps are being taken to address the problems of truck drivers cutting corners and or using drugs to stay awake to meet unrealistic deadlines or simply make a living? Are you saying you've got a Dover company in line or something? Did you say that you had someone could dob their company in? Is that what you said?
Yes, that's
correct. Do you have any stats
Senator.
for that? I mean, do we know how that's working?
I do not have any statistics for
Is
that,
it
I'm
a
afraid, Senator.
1-800 number or?
I don't have any further information on that with me here, Senator, but if I could speak to what we're doing on heavy vehicle
Sorry,
driving.
can we just pursue that point?
Sure.
You mentioned that there's the ability for someone in the industry to report untoward behaviour by their company.
Yes,
How do they actually do that?
they ring a phone line.
And that's manned 24 hours a day?
I would have to take that on notice, Senator. It's not
Is it
administered by the Commonwealth Government.
insourced provision of service, or is it an outsourced provision of service?
It's administered by the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator, so I'm afraid I don't have the answers to your questions. I would have to take that on notice.
Thank you. If you could take that on notice. So how does it actually work? Is it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Do they speak to a physical person or do they leave a message? How many calls have they had? Some feedback about how long it's been in place, how much does it cost? Those sorts of generic sort of questions
Yep,
about
certainly,
that.
Senator.
We've got some questions about the Ministerial Forum on Vehicle Admissions. Has anybody got any answers on that?
Yes, Senator.
How many times has the forum met?
I don't know, Senator, how many times the forum has met. It met most recently in March of this year.
Okay, so perhaps if we could have on notice, when was the last meeting? Is there a published meeting schedule? Has there been, so you said it met in March of 2018?
Yes, Senator.
Who's represented on the Cross-Government Departmental Committee?
It's the Department of Energy, the Department of Environment and Energy. It's the Department of Infrastructure, Regional Development and Cities. The Prime Minister's Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet is represented. And we also have representation from the Department of Health.
So is it commissioning any research or advice to underpin their work?
Yes, Senator.
Is that research or advice made available to all stakeholder groups?
Senator, again, that's a question for government. Sometimes it is and sometimes it is not.
So is the Ministerial Forum on Vehicle Emissions committed to undertaking a single cost-benefit analysis that assesses the package of fuel quality, COT and Euro 6 as a single regulatory measure?
Yes, we have committed to that. Yes, Senator, we have committed to that.
Okay. So what would be the timeline for the government's decision on Euro 6 emission regulations?
Well, again, Senator, that's a matter for government. It remains our expectation that that would be this year.
So the draft regulatory statement, impact statement on Euro 6 was released in December of 2016. Can you advise the committee what options are currently being considered and timelines for implementation?
So I think one of the complexities that has arisen with this work, Senator, is feedback from a number of stakeholders that the three different measures needed to be considered more closely together, working how they relate to each other and the trade-offs that different stakeholders may be asked to accept in putting forward a combined package has taken some time. As I say, we continue to expect that a decision on all three measures would be taken this year.
Can you put on the Hansard who the stakeholders are?
I think there's a broad range of peak bodies who are involved from from both the automobile side, health side and general environmental side. So we can take that on notice, the people who we've been engaging with and who Environment's been engaging with.
So do you have a timeline for your preferred COT standard for light vehicles?
I think, as Ms Werner's already indicated, it is ultimately a matter for government, but we're working towards a decision this year.
So has the department proposed a standard to ministers?
There have been multiple discussions with ministers on options.
So there's a standard that the department agrees on and you put that up for consideration?
I think, Senator, that's not exactly what I said. I said the
well, let me ask the
options.
question again.
Yeah.
Has the department proposed a preferred COT standard to ministers?
I think it'd be better to say we've put forward a number of options for consideration.
So you don't have a preferred COT standard? Is that because you're dealing with multiple international partners, or why would that be?
Well, as Ms Werner
Isn't it
said,
a matter of science?
the matter is quite complex, trying to get the package between the three elements, and as a result, we've been looking at various options.
Has the timing of availability of a suitable fuel been considered in the development of a COT target and timing?
Yes, Senator.
If the 105 gram kilometre target in 2025 proposed to stakeholders for comment in August of 2017, is that still an option?
I think, Senator, as I said, there are a number of options that are being considered. Obviously, the timing, both the actual the 105 and the year in which you might be working towards are all variables that are currently under consideration.
So given the situation you find yourself in, what timelines are feasible for implementation and for the vehicle manufacturing industry to be able to comply?
Well, Senator, that's why we're talking with a number of the stakeholders to make sure that we do understand how these various elements all interact and what is actually feasible.
So if a 2025 target is feasible, when would legislation need to be cleared by the Parliament? What's the lead-in time for this sort of stuff?
Well, sorry, Ms Werner.
So, Senator, in the EU and the United States, it's been around 10 years. We would expect legislation to be in place, and then we would expect the requirements to commence on a graduated basis, so a certain percentage of the fleet to meet the requirements in a certain year, and then a greater percentage of the fleet to meet the requirements the following year, and they would be phased in over a number of years. However, the exact schedule for the phase-in has not been decided, but it would be over a period of years.
So in other legislative frame, what did you say, the United States and Europe, it's
Yes.
been a 10-year lead-in?
Yes, roughly, yes.
So, we're in halfway through 2018, so is 2030 your new target date, or has that been, the 2025 been moved back?
As I said, Senator, a number of options are currently being considered and discussed with government.
So will any change in the US targets, which are under review, change the advice being provided by the department to the government? Do you take your, are you cognisant of what's happening in the United States at the moment?
We're obviously watching quite closely the review that's underway at the moment.
And will that, if that changes, will that change your advice?
We obviously have to be mindful about what's happening internationally, so that's why we're watching what's happening in the US.
So just to return to, does the department, perhaps Mr Kennedy, do you view road safety as an area where you should take leadership with the states?
Yes, Senator, we do.
Will you be attending the road safety conference in Sydney this year?
Will I personally be?
Well, road safety. I mean, you get 700 professionals from all around the country convening at the road safety conference. Does the department get represented there?
Certainly, Senator, we will have representatives at a senior level at that conference.
Were you in Perth last year?
I wasn't actually responsible for road safety this time when that conference was on, and I'd have to take on notice who from the department attended.
So you do think that leadership from the Commonwealth would be pertinent and smart?
Yes, Senator, we do. I mean, as Ms Spence talked about before, we have to do this with our colleagues at the state level, of course, because they're responsible for a number of aspects of programs that are going to contribute to road safety. The department takes it seriously. We often don't have the specific levers on some of these issues, be they around speed or the application of laws in states, but we certainly, I can assure you that we and our state colleagues, frankly, and the ministers involved are all very much apprised of the issues around road safety.
So I've spoken to people in the government, and they're of the view that road safety is predominantly a state issue. That's not the department's view?
As I mentioned, Senator, a lot of the levers for road safety do lie with the state, but that doesn't stop the Commonwealth with our state colleagues, encouraging them to share best practice. As Ms Spence mentioned earlier, there's been a number of investments in road infrastructure, partially funded by the Commonwealth, that have made big changes in road safety. I recently had an opportunity to look at the Midlands Highway, for example, in Tasmania, where there was the wire road separation, acoustic line markings. These things can make a big difference to road safety. So it is something in that sense. While we don't have the legislative responsibilities for some of the things that may change road safety, we can show leadership and we attempt to show that leadership.
Is the department working on any of the issues in respect to driver distractions from a national level?
Senator, at the Transport and Infrastructure Council meeting on Friday, one of the issues that was discussed is some work that Austroads is doing around best practice to address driver distraction. So we'll be engaged with Austroads as they progress that piece of work.
And what about with the implementation of 5G networks or spectrum and the intelligent intersections that will arise and intelligent cars that will arise out of that new ability? Is the department doing any work in that area?
We're certainly involved with the Department of Communications. They've got a working group that's been established to look at 5G and look at it from all the different portfolios perspective. So we'll obviously be looking at what technology can do to improve road safety outcomes.
So which one of your 5.5 people would be looking in that direction?
Sorry, say that again?
Which one of your 5.5 people would be looking in that direction? Is there a designated officer that's looking into that?
I'm the representative on the working group in the Department of Communications, and various people in the department do support. We do actually have an area in the department which, again, not dedicated to road safety, but is looking at new transport technologies, and they'll also be looking at those sorts of issues as well in terms of what these new technologies can do around improving road safety outcomes.
Senator, that was my response on the 5.5 persons. I'd like to clarify it, if I may. So I'm responsible for the Land Transport Policy and Safety branch. In that branch, I have a section which leads on policy coordination for road safety. That's what I refer to when I refer to 5.5 full-time equivalent people. I also have a section in my branch which is around 9 people who work on a whole range of COAG-related initiatives to deal with both light vehicle and heavy vehicle safety, including working through the National Transport Commission and the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator. In addition to that work, as Mr Folds and Ms Spence have mentioned, we have the Vehicle Safety Standards branch, also in Mr Folds' division, the 57 people who are working on the rules that you mentioned earlier to ensure that vehicles are safe. And as Ms Spence just mentioned, we also have people working on technology futures, as well as people in the Bureau working on these statistics, which I provided to you earlier. So it is, I apologise, there's not only 5.5 people working on road safety in the department. I was referring to one specific section, which essentially coordinates policy across all of those areas.
Okay, and I think you've taken on notice how you're going to further explain what the department does in areas of road safety and where the resources are allocated. Is there any proposed increase in the vehicle charge on imported vehicles? It's what's currently $10 or something?
Not that I'm aware, Senator, but I'm happy to take it on notice.
But doesn't that $10 go towards underpinning the road safety people in the department?
So the cost recovery arrangements for the Vehicle Safety Standards branch are being reviewed as a part of the reforms that we're currently pursuing to the Motor Vehicle Standards Act. That cost recovery implementation statement has not yet been finalised.
So is there a charge on every imported vehicle into Australia, of which there is 1.2 million, which then goes to resourcing road safety in the department?
It goes to, it is a cost, Senator, that goes into cost recovery, which funds the department's activities.
Okay.
It hasn't been reviewed for many years, and we are going to be reviewing it when we move into the new Road Vehicle Standards Act arrangements, so that it becomes more responsive, I suppose, and reflects better the regulatory environment that we expect to come into force with the new Act.
Well, it would seem quite a logical step, if it hasn't been reviewed for many years, that if you were to even double it to $20, I'm not sure that a new vehicle owner would miss the $20 or even notice the $20. And were that to double your efforts in national road safety initiatives, it'd probably be an eminently good thing without impacting the budget bottom line.
Senator Gallacher, Justine Potter, I'm the department's Chief Financial Officer. The revenue from those charges does not come directly to the department. It's returned to consolidated revenue.
But it underpins the funding, is what I heard. So, I mean, it doesn't matter which way you send it, but the rationale is that it underpins the Road Safety Office,
Yes.
the department.
Yes, it's just there's not a direct relationship between the recovery of that revenue and the department's funding.
Yet in the broad sense, you're correct, Senator, it underpins, yeah.
So if it were to double, you may be able to put more people on the job in terms of saving 600 lives or 24,000 hospitalised injuries. So, I could go all day, mate, but I'll have
It sounds like that.
He's an ex-commissioner.
There's nothing worse than ex-commissioners. Can I interpose